A lady's journey. An elderly woman is left alone at an airport without money, phone, or any explanation. With tears in her eyes, she watches passengers depart while time freezes around her. But just when all seems lost, something extraordinary happens. What this grandmother decides to do transforms not only her life, but the lives of everyone around her. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. We'll continue. I promise this will be the best story you'll ever hear in your life. William Taylor observed the city from his office atop the most imposing building on Madison Avenue. At 45, he had built a real estate empire that placed him among the most powerful men in New York. The platinum watch on his wrist indicated he was late for an important meeting, but something kept him paralyzed before the panoramic window. It had been 15 years since Amanda had inhabited his thoughts with such intensity. 15 years since she had disappeared from his life without a trace. The dream from the previous night had brought back her face with disturbing clarity, as if time had not passed. The phone rang for the third time, pulling him from his reverie. "Mr. Taylor, the investors are already in the meeting room," his assistant informed him with a tense voice. "I'm on my way, Rebecca," he replied dryly. The meeting dragged on for 2 hours. When it finally ended, William felt exhausted. Not from the content of the discussion, negotiations were his natural habitat, but from the effort of keeping his mind present when his thoughts insisted on wandering to the past. He dismissed his driver and decided to drive himself. He needed control, the sensation of being able to choose his own path, even if it was just through the chaotic traffic of New York. He opted for a detour, avoiding the expressways. Something inside him was seeking chance, as if the less predictable streets could offer answers that his organized world could not. It was at the intersection of Broadway and Fifth Avenue that the unexpected finally happened. The traffic light turned red, forcing him to stop his imported Porsche. Through the window, he saw a small group of children selling flowers to pedestrians. William's distracted gaze suddenly gained focus when he realized that 4 of the girls were absolutely identical to each other, quadruplets. They must have been about 10 years old, dressed in simple but clean clothes, all with the same dark hair tied in ponytails. They moved in synchrony, offering small bouquets to hurried passers-by. But it wasn't the rarity of seeing quadruplets that made William's heart almost stop. It was their faces. Those slightly almond-shaped eyes, the shape of the chin, the way they tilted their heads when smiling. It was like seeing Amanda multiplied by 4, rejuvenated and returned to the world in the form of those children. The impatient honk from the car behind snapped him out of his trance. The light had turned green. Automatically, William accelerated. But his mind remained at that corner with those 4 girls who carried the face of the only woman he had truly loved. Without thinking twice, he made a U-turn at the first opportunity. He parked illegally and hurriedly walked back to where he had seen the girls. His heart beat erratically, driven by a mixture of anxiety and an emotion he couldn't name. They were still there, now accompanied by an elderly, gray-haired woman who supervised the children's work with an attentive eye. William approached hesitantly, feeling strangely vulnerable in his impeccable suit. "How much for the bouquet?" he asked, addressing one of the quadruplets. The girl raised her eyes to him, and William felt an even stronger shock of recognition. Up close, the resemblance was striking. $10, sir," she answered with a politeness that contrasted with the precariousness of her situation. William took out his wallet and extended a $100 bill. "I'll take one from each of you," he said, indicating the 4 sisters. The girls exchanged surprised glances, but promptly selected their best flowers. The gray-haired woman approached, suspicious. "Is there a problem?" she asked with an accent that revealed Midwestern origins. "None at all," William smiled, trying to appear casual. "I just thought the flowers were beautiful." "Do you want your change?" asked one of the girls, extending some crumpled bills. "No, keep it," replied William, receiving the 4 small bouquets. Then, trying to sound disinterested, he added, "Are you always around here?" The woman intervened before the girls could answer. "Depends on the day. We don't have a fixed spot." William perceived the suspicion and decided not to insist. He thanked them and walked away. but not before carefully observing each of the girls, committing their identical faces to memory, faces that disturbed him so deeply. Back in his car, he placed the flowers carefully on the passenger seat. The sweet fragrance filled the luxurious interior of the vehicle, creating a poignant contrast between the worlds that had just met. For a few minutes, William remained motionless, his hands still on the steering wheel but without starting the engine. What was happening to him? Why did those children affect him so much? Was it just the resemblance to Amanda? Or was there something more, something his rational mind refused to fully process? That night, in his duplex penthouse on the Upper East Side, William couldn't sleep. Images of the quadruplets mixed with memories of Amanda in a whirlwind that gave him no respite. He remembered their last meeting, 15 years before. The boudoir. Argument, the accusations, the door slamming. He never imagined it would be the last time he would see her. The next morning, he made a decision. He called Paul Mitchell, a former police officer who occasionally performed discreet services for his company. "I need you to locate some people for me," said William without preamble. 4 girls, quadruplets, about 10 years old. They sell flowers on the streets downtown, accompanied by a gray-haired elderly woman, apparently responsible for them. "Any problem with these children, Mr. Taylor?" asked Paul with the caution of someone who had received ethically questionable requests in the past. "No problem," William assured him. "I just want to know who they are, where they live, what their situation is. It's a personal interest." Paul hesitated for a moment, but the generous bank transfer that accompanied the request dispelled any reluctance. "I'll start the search today," he confirmed. "I should have preliminary information in a few days." William hung up the phone and turned his attention back to the window. Outside, New York pulsated in its frenetic rhythm, indifferent to the small dramas unfolding at each corner, in each life. Somewhere in that concrete labyrinth, 4 girls with Amanda's face were selling flowers to survive. And for some reason, he didn't yet fully understand, finding them had become his absolute priority. In the days that followed, William immersed himself in work with renewed intensity, as if constant activity could ward off obsessive thoughts about the girls. He closed important deals, participated in decisive meetings, but part of his mind remained distant, anxiously awaiting news from Paul. The call came on Friday, when it was already past 9 in the evening. "I found the girls, Mr. Taylor," announced Paul, "and I discovered some things you'll want to know personally." There was something in the investigator's tone that made William feel a chill down his spine. "Come to my apartment now," he instructed, feeling he was about to cross a threshold of no return. An hour later, Paul Mitchell sat across from William in the elegant office of the penthouse. On the glass table, a brown envelope contained the result of his investigation. "The girls are named Laura, Lucy, Lily, and Luna," began Paul. "They live in a children's home in the East Side run by a non-profit. The woman who accompanies them is Mrs. Judith, an employee of the institution." William nodded, absorbing the information with apparent calm despite the acceleration of his heartbeat. "And their mother?" he asked, trying to control the anxiety in his voice. Paul hesitated, as if carefully choosing his words. "That's where the story gets interesting. The girl's mother is named Amanda Richardson." The name hit William like a physical blow. Amanda. His Amanda. Where is she?" he managed to ask, his voice almost failing. "Serving a sentence at Westbrook Women's Correctional Facility," replied Paul. "She was convicted for alleged involvement in a banking fraud scheme, but there is substantial evidence that she was framed. She's been imprisoned for almost 3 years." William rose abruptly, walking to the window to hide the emotion that threatened to overflow. Amanda imprisoned. Unjustly. And 4 girls, her daughters, selling flowers on the streets. The math was simple. 10 years plus 9 months of gestation. Exactly when Amanda had disappeared from his life. "There's one more thing," continued Paul, opening the envelope and removing a birth certificate. "I thought you might want to see this." William turned slowly and took the document. His gaze immediately fixed on the father field. There was his name, William Taylor, registered as the father of the 4 girls. "This is," he began, but words failed him. "Yes," confirmed Paul. "According to all official documents, you are the father of the quadruplets. Apparently their mother made a point of registering them with your name, even without your knowledge or consent." William dropped heavily into the chair, the document still in his trembling hands. He remembered his last conversation with Amanda, the words she had tried to say, and which he, in his arrogance, had refused to hear. She had been trying to tell him about the pregnancy. "I need to see these girls," he suddenly declared. "I need to meet them, talk to them." Paul observed him with a mixture of understanding and concern. "Mr. Taylor, if I may offer some advice, proceed with caution. These children don't know you. To them, you're just a name on a document. Appearing suddenly, declaring yourself their father, could be traumatic." William took a deep breath, recognizing the wisdom in the investigator's words. "You're right. I need a more gradual approach." He paused, organizing his thoughts. "And what about Amanda? How can I help her? How can I get her out of that situation?" "You'll need a good attorney specialized in criminal appeals," replied Paul, "and a lot of patience. The judicial system isn't known for its speed, even for someone with your resources." That night, after Paul left, William remained for hours contemplating the birth certificates of his daughters. 4 lives he had helped create, and of which he had no idea. 4 parts of Amanda growing up without his presence, without his support. Reality hit him in successive waves. He was a father of quadruplets, and they were growing up without a mother, in an institution, selling flowers on the streets to survive. Meanwhile, he accumulated fortunes in his real estate ventures, living in luxury and comfort. A resolution crystallized in his mind. He would correct these mistakes. He would find a way to approach his daughters without traumatizing them. He would use all his resources to free Amanda and discover who had framed her. And finally, he would reunite the family he never knew he had. The Hope House Children's home was located in a peripheral neighborhood of New York, surrounded by walls covered with colorful graffiti that tried to disguise the simplicity of the structure. William observed the place discreetly from inside his car, parked on the opposite sidewalk. Dressed in jeans and a t-shirt instead of his usual Italian suit, he tried to go unnoticed while organizing his thoughts. A week had passed since Paul's revelation. 7 days of insomnia, questioning, and careful planning. After consulting a child psychologist without fully revealing the situation, William had opted for a gradual approach. He couldn't simply appear in the girls' lives announcing himself as the father they had never known. The strategy he had developed was simple. He would offer financial support to the institution as a businessman interested in social causes. This would give him regular access to the place and to the children, allowing him to build a relationship before revealing the truth. In parallel, he had already hired Dr. Claudia Martin, a renowned attorney specializing in criminal appeals, to take Amanda's case. The first visit to the prison was scheduled for the following week, something that filled him simultaneously with expectation and apprehension. Taking a deep breath, William got out of the car and walked to the gate of the institution. An old doorbell produced a strident sound. Moments later, a middle-aged woman with a tired but kind expression answered. "Good morning. Can I help you?" "Good morning. My name is William Taylor. I'd like to speak with the person in charge of the institution." The mention of his name didn't provoke any special reaction, which relieved him. Apparently, Amanda hadn't shared his identity with the staff at the shelter. "I'm Margaret, the coordinator of the house. How can I help you?" William rehearsed the prepared speech about corporate social responsibility and his interest in supporting institutions that worked with children in vulnerable situations. Margaret listened attentively, accustomed to receiving donation offers that didn't always materialize. "Would it be possible to learn about your work? To understand the most urgent needs before defining how I can contribute," he finished. "Of course," replied Margaret, leading him inside. "We're always open to showing our work. Actually, any help would be very welcome at this time." The internal structure of the house revealed a clean and organized environment, despite the evident scarcity of resources. Children of various ages circulated through the spaces, some involved in recreational activities, others doing school homework. William's gaze scanned each area, anxious for a glimpse of the quadruplets. At the moment, we shelter 28 children from 2 to 17 years old, explained Margaret as they walked. We rely on volunteers for academic reinforcement and cultural activities, but we always need more help. William listened attentively, absorbing every detail, but his mind continued to search for his daughters. Finally, when they reached a small garden at the back of the property, he saw them. The four were sitting under a tree, apparently engaged in making small flower arrangements. Mrs. Judith, the woman who accompanied them on the street, supervised their work with occasional guidance. The scene had an almost dreamlike quality for William. Those four identical girls so concentrated on their task, unaware of the presence of the man who had contributed to their existence. "Are those the quadruplets?" he asked, trying to sound casual despite the emotion that dominated him. Margaret smiled. "Yes, our little florists. Laura, Lucy, Lily, and Luna. They've been with us for almost 3 years since their mother was detained. They're extraordinary. Children extremely united, and talented with flowers, as you can see. May I meet them?" asked William, unable to contain the anxiety in his voice. "Of course," replied Margaret, leading him to the group. As they approached, William felt his heart accelerate. Up close, the resemblance to Amanda was even more striking. Each of the girls seemed to have inherited a different aspect of their mother. The smile in one, the determined look in another, the elegant posture in the third, the dreamy expression in the laster. "Girls, we have a visitor," announced Margaret. "This is Mr. William Taylor. He's interested in learning about our work here at the house." 4 identical pairs of eyes rose simultaneously to face him. William felt his legs weaken slightly under the weight of those gazes. It was like being evaluated by miniaturized versions of Amanda. "Hello," he managed to say, his voice hoarser than normal. "It's a pleasure to meet you." One of the girls, he still couldn't differentiate them, stood up and extended her hand with surprising politeness for her age. "I'm Lucy," she introduced herself. "These are my sisters, Laura, Lily, and Luna." Each one waved as they heard their name, allowing William to begin identifying them. Laura seemed the most serious, Lucy the most sociable. Lily had a contemplative air, and Luna, the smallest of the 4 by a few centimeters, demonstrated a shyness that made her partially hide behind her sisters. "Are you making flower arrangements?" asked William, crouching down to their height. "Yes," replied Lucy, naturally assuming the role of spokesperson for the group. "We sell them on the streets to help the house. Mrs. Judith taught us how to make them." The gray-haired woman smiled, discreetly, a gesture that mixed pride and sadness. "The girls have a natural talent. They learned quickly." "May I see?" asked William. Luna, the shyest, surprisingly extended her almost finished arrangement. It was a simple composition, but harmoniously organized with wildflowers and foliage. "It's beautiful," he sincerely complimented. "You are all very talented." A blush of pride colored the identical faces. William realized that despite the adverse circumstances, the girls maintained an impressive dignity. Amanda had certainly transmitted her values before being unjustly separated from them. The visit continued, with Margaret showing the rest of the facilities and explaining the financial difficulties of the institution. William listened with genuine attention, but part of his mind remained in the garden with his daughters. At the end of the tour, he didn't hesitate. "I'd like to make a substantial monthly donation," he declared, "and also help with urgent structural renovations. Additionally, if there's no objection, I'd like to come regularly, perhaps as a volunteer. I'm terrible at manual work, but I can help with academic reinforcement, for example." Margaret's eyes shone with genuine hope. "Offers like that were rare. That would be wonderful, Mr. Taylor. The children need positive male references, especially those who don't have contact with their fathers." The irony of the comment didn't go unnoticed by William, who felt a pang of guilt. If only Margaret knew that he was the father of 4 of the children under her care. In the days that followed, William completely reorganized his schedule. He delegated responsibilities, cancelled non-essential commitments, all to free up time for his new priority projects, building a relationship with his daughters and securing Amanda's release. The first visit to the prison was a shock that left him emotionally exhausted. Seeing Amanda, still beautiful despite the paleness and thinness resulting from confinement, brought to the surface feelings he thought were buried. "Why are you here, William?" was her first question, without preamble, after the initial impact of seeing him there on the other side of the visitation table. "I found our daughters," he replied, equally direct. "And I came to get you out of here." Amanda's eyes watered, but she maintained her composure. "Took you long enough, don't you think?" William lowered his gaze, silently accepting the criticism. "I didn't know, Amanda. I swear I didn't know. About the pregnancy. If I had known—" "You would have done what?" she interrupted. "Believed me? Taken responsibility? We both know you wouldn't have. You were too busy building your empire to listen to an architecture student who made the mistake of falling in love with her boss." The words hit William like a slap. He knew he deserved every one of them. "You're right," he admitted. "I was arrogant, self-centered, obsessed with success. I don't deserve forgiveness, but our daughters deserve a chance to have their mother back, and you deserve justice." Amanda studied his face for long moments, as if looking for signs of falsehood. "How are they?" she finally asked, her voice softening. "They're extraordinary," replied William, unable to contain a smile. "Strong, intelligent, united. They look a lot like you, not just physically." A silence established itself between them, laden with 15 years of absences, of things unsaid, of paths that could have been different. "Dr. Claudia Martin has taken your case," informed William. "She's the best in the country for criminal appeals. She's already analyzing the entire process, looking for procedural flaws, neglected evidence, anything that could support a request for review." Amanda nodded slowly. "I was framed, William. Someone carefully set me up to put me here. Do you have any idea who might have done this, and why?" "I have my suspicions," she replied, hesitant, "but I prefer not to talk about it now. Not without proof." The visit ended with the promise that William would return the following week. As he left the prison, he felt the weight of responsibility like never before. He needed to correct the mistakes of the past, and the first step was to truly get close to his daughters. In the weeks that followed, William became a constant presence at Hope House. Initially as a donor and occasional visitor, he soon assumed the role of volunteer, helping with academic reinforcement tasks and maintenance of the space. The children, including his daughters, gradually became accustomed to his presence. It was during a study session that Laura, the most serious of the quadruplets, approached him directly. "Why are you really here?" she asked, while the other children concentrated on their math exercises. "Rich people like you usually just send money, they don't show up in person." The girl's perspicacity didn't surprise William. At 10 years old, she already demonstrated a keen capacity for observation and a healthy skepticism regarding adults' intentions. "Maybe I'm looking for something that money can't buy," he replied, deciding to be as honest as possible without revealing the whole truth yet. Laura studied him with those eyes so similar to Amanda's. "Our mother always said we should be suspicious of people who suddenly appear offering help." "Your mother is a wise woman," agreed William. "She kept you safe with that advice." "Do you know her?" asked Laura, suddenly alert. "Our mother?" William realized he had made a slip. "I knew her recently," he replied, opting for a half-truth. "I'm working to help her get out of prison." Laura's eyes widened, and she immediately called her sisters with a discreet gesture. In seconds, the four surrounded him, their identical faces displaying a mixture of suspicion and hope. "You're helping our mother?" asked Lucy, the most communicative. "How? Why?" William felt cornered by those intense gazes. He wasn't ready to reveal the whole truth, but he also couldn't lie to them. "I hired a very competent lawyer to review her case," he explained. "I believe your mother was unjustly convicted and deserves freedom." "But why?" insisted Laura. "Why do you care?" At that moment, Luna, the smallest and quietest of the four, approached and hesitantly touched William's hand. Her eyes, identical to her sister's but somehow more perceptive, seemed to see beyond his words. "You're someone important to Mommy," she said, not as a question but as a statement. William felt an overwhelming emotion in the face of that childish intuition that captured truths that adults tried to hide. Before he could respond, they were interrupted by Mrs. Judith, who was calling the girls for dinner. That night, upon returning to his penthouse apartment, William knew he was reaching a turning point. The approach with the girls was advancing, faster than planned. Soon the truth would need to be revealed. But first there was another mystery to solve. Who had framed Amanda, and why? The answer would come unexpectedly. The next morning, while reviewing documents sent by Dr. Claudia about Amanda's case, William received a surprise visit to his office. Helen, his half-sister and legal director of Taylor Developments. "I heard you hired a renowned criminal attorney," she said without preamble, entering without being announced. "And also that you've been regularly visiting a woman convicted of fraud at Westbrook Women's Correctional Facility. Anything I should know about, dear brother?" The way Helen pronounced those words, especially the part about the convicted woman, made William feel a shiver run down his spine. Suddenly, several pieces began to fit together in his mind, forming a disturbing picture that he wasn't yet fully ready to accept. William's office, normally a refuge of tranquility in the bustling business center of New York, seemed to have lost its air of security. Helen's words hung in the environment like a veiled threat, subtly altering the balance of power between the half-siblings. "I didn't know you monitored my personal activities," replied William, keeping his voice controlled as he closed the folder. With Amanda's documents, Helen smiled, that calculated smile she had perfected over years of corporate negotiations. "I don't monitor. I just worry. After all, any scandal involving you directly affects the company and the family." William carefully observed his half-sister. 5 years older than him, Helen was the daughter of his father's first marriage. When the patriarch had died 10 years ago, he had left the company equally divided between the two. While William had assumed the operational and strategic side, Helen commanded the legal and administrative area with relentless efficiency. "Amanda Richardson isn't just a convicted woman, as you described her," he finally replied. "She's the mother of my daughters." The impact of the revelation was visible on Helen's face. For a brief moment, her mask of control slipped, revealing genuine surprise. But the recovery was quick. "Daughters," she repeated, a perfectly delineated eyebrow rising. "You never mentioned daughters, William, and you certainly never mentioned this Amanda. Because I didn't know of their existence until recently," he explained. "Amanda was pregnant when we separated 15 years ago. I only discovered about the girls, quadruplets, by the way, a few weeks ago." Helen walked slowly around the room, absorbing the information. "Quadruplets," she murmured. "How convenient. And I suppose this woman now expects you to get her out of prison and transform her into the new Mrs. Taylor, along with her 4 miraculously discovered daughters." The insinuation provoked a wave of irritation in William. "Amanda hasn't asked for anything. It was I who sought her out after finding the girls by chance. And as for her situation, there is substantial evidence that she was framed." "Evidence?" questioned Helen, her tone suddenly sharper. "What kind of evidence?" "Procedural inconsistencies, witnesses who mysteriously changed testimonies, circumstantial evidence accepted without question," enumerated William. Dr. Claudia found a suspicious pattern of financial movements that were attributed to Amanda, but that clearly followed an operational logic too sophisticated for someone without experience in the sector. Helen remained impassive, but William noticed a slight stiffening in her posture. "And this led you to conclude that she was framed? Wouldn't it be more logical to think that this woman is simply smarter than she appears?" "Not when I know her character," countered William, "and not when the fraudulent transactions began. Precisely when she tried to contact me about the pregnancy." A heavy silence settled between them. Helen resumed her walk around the office, stopping in front of the panoramic window that offered a privileged view of the city. "Are you implying something, William?" she finally asked without turning around. The question hung in the air for a few seconds. William carefully considered his next words, aware that he was treading on dangerous ground. "I'm seeking the truth, Helen. For myself, for my daughters, and for Amanda." Helen turned slowly, her face a mask of fraternal concern that didn't reach her eyes. "I just hope this search doesn't destroy everything we've built. Taylor Developments is our legacy, William. Think about what Father would say if he saw his heir involved in a scandal with a prison inmate and 4 daughters of questionable paternity." "The paternity isn't questionable," affirmed William, his voice hardening. "I did the DNA test. They're my daughters, Helen. My nieces, incidentally." Something flashed in Helen's eyes. Anger, fear, but was quickly suppressed. "Well, in that case, congratulations on the sudden increase in your family," she said, heading for the door. At the exit, she added, "Just remember that your decisions now affect more people than you imagine." The door closed softly, but the echo of the veiled threat remained. William stood motionless for a few moments, processing the interaction. Helen's reaction had been revealing. There was something more to this story, something his half-sister didn't want him to discover. That same afternoon, William met with Dr. Claudia and Paul, the investigator, in a discreet restaurant, far from the environments he usually frequented. "I believe my half-sister may be involved in Amanda's case," he revealed, after sharing the details of the morning meeting. Dr. Claudia pondered the information with professional caution. "That's a serious accusation, Mr. Taylor. We need concrete evidence before proceeding down that path." "I agree," said Paul, "but her reaction is, at the very least, suspicious. I'll investigate discreetly, check if there are connections between Helen and people involved in Amanda's case." As they discussed the next steps, William's phone rang. It was Margaret, the coordinator of Hope House, her tense voice conveying immediate concern. "Mr. Taylor, we had a visit from Child Protective Services today. They're questioning the quadruplets' permanence here, claiming they should be transferred to institutions specialized in long-term cases. We've never had this type of intervention before." William's heart accelerated. The coincidence was too disturbing to be ignored. "When did this happen?" "About an hour ago. They mentioned the possibility of separating the girls, claiming it would facilitate adaptation and eventual adoption processes." "Separate the sisters?" repeated William, horrified. "That's absurd. I won't let that happen." After reassuring Margaret with promises of immediate help, William hung up and faced his companions. "It's Helen. It has to be. She's trying to remove the girls, probably to pressure Amanda somehow. Or to keep them away from you," suggested Paul. "If the girls are transferred and separated, it will be much more difficult to maintain contact with them." Dr. Claudia intervened with pragmatism. "We need to act quickly on 2 fronts. Prevent the transfer of the girls and accelerate the process of Amanda's criminal appeal. Mr. Taylor, have you considered officially assuming paternity and requesting temporary custody of the children?" The question caught William by surprise. In his reflections on how to correct the mistakes of the past, he had not yet contemplated this specific possibility. The idea of becoming legally responsible for 4 10-year-old children practically overnight was frightening. "I believe it would be the most immediate protection for them," continued the lawyer, interpreting his silence. "Even if the process of freeing Amanda is successful, it will take time. Meanwhile, as a recognized father, you could ensure they remain together and safe." William nodded slowly. "You're right. That's what I should do." He paused, aware of the magnitude of this decision. "But first, I need to tell the truth to the girls. I can't initiate a legal process without them knowing who I really am." The next day, with his heart racing and mind full of doubts about how to approach such a significant revelation, William headed to Hope House. He had previously arranged with Margaret a private conversation with the quadruplets, explaining only that he needed to discuss something important related to their situation. The coordinator accommodated them in a small room used for therapy, a welcoming environment with colorful cushions scattered on the floor and children's drawings on the walls. The 4 girls entered with expressions ranging from curiosity to suspicion. "Did something happen to Mommy?" Lucy immediately asked, always direct. "No, your mother is fine," assured William. "In fact, The news about her case is promising. Doctor. Claudia found important inconsistencies that may support a request for review. 4 identical expressions of relief appeared, but tension didn't completely abandon their small bodies. They sensed there was more to be said. Girls, began William, looking for the right words, I need to tell you something very important, something that will change the relationship between us. He took a deep breath. A long time ago, before you were born, your mother and I met. We loved each other. Laura, the most serious and analytical, narrowed her eyes. You were Mum's boyfriend? Yes, confirmed William. For almost a year. Then we separated and I didn't know she was expecting you. A heavy silence filled the room as the girls processed the information. It was Luna, the smallest and most intuitive, who verbalized the conclusion that was beginning to form. You're our father, she asked, her voice almost a whisper. William felt emotion tighten his throat. Yes, he answered simply. I am your father. The reactions were as distinct as the personalities of the 4 sisters. Lucy audibly gasped, covering her mouth with her hands. Laura remained impassive, coldly analyzing the revelation as if looking for logical flaws. Lily, the dreamer, blinked repeatedly, as if trying to adjust her vision to the new reality. Luna, after asking the crucial question, remained absolutely still, her large eyes fixed on William. Did you abandon Mum? Asked Laura, her voice laden with accusation. The question hit William like a physical blow, but he knew he needed absolute honesty. We separated before she knew about the pregnancy. When she tried to tell me, I didn't believe the babies could be mine. It was a terrible mistake, the worst of my life. Why didn't you believe her? Insisted Laura. Because years before, doctors had told me I couldn't have children, explained William. It was a mistaken diagnosis, but at the time I believed. When your mother tried to contact me, I misinterpreted her intentions. And now you show up after 10 years wanting to be our father? Continued Laura, her voice mixing distrust and hurt. I don't know if I deserve to be your father, admitted William with sincerity. I made serious mistakes, abandoned your mother when she most needed support, lost years I could have spent with you. I don't expect you to forgive me or accept me immediately. Then why are you telling us this now? Asked Lucy, recovering from the initial shock. Because you deserve to know the truth, he replied, and also because you're in danger of being separated. He then explained about the visit from Child Protective Services, the threat of transfer, and the plan to request temporary custody to keep them together and safe while working for Amanda's release. But I'll only do this if you agree, he finished. It's an important decision that will directly affect your lives. If you prefer, I can find another way to protect you, without officially assuming paternity yet. A reflective silence followed his words. The 4 girls exchanged glances, communicating in that silent language that only twin sisters seemed to master. Finally, to everyone's surprise, it was Luna, the quietest, who spoke. Mommy always said our father wasn't a bad person, just scared, she revealed, her voice soft but clear. She said that one day we would understand. The revelation moved William. Even after his abandonment, Amanda had not poisoned the daughters against him, more evidence of the extraordinary character of the woman he had let go. We don't want to be separated, declared Lucy, after another exchange of glances between the sisters. If you can prevent that, then... But don't think we're going to call you Dad just like that out of nowhere, interrupted Laura, still defensive. We need time. All the time you need, assured William, respecting the condition. I'm not trying to replace your mother or force a relationship that needs to be built naturally. I just want to protect you and help bring Amanda back to you. The eye. Conversation continued for some time, with the girls asking questions about the past, about how he and Amanda had met, about plans for the future. William answered everything with honesty, even when the truth showed him in an unfavorable light. At the end of the meeting, as the girls were already preparing to leave, Luna approached hesitantly and, in a gesture that surprised everyone, extended her small hand to touch William's face. I have your eyes, she said, with the disconcerting simplicity of children. The gesture broke something inside William, a barrier he didn't even know existed. Tears, which he hadn't allowed to surface for years, blurred his vision. "Yes," he agreed with a choked voice. "All four of you do." In the days that followed, events precipitated at an accelerated pace. With the girls' consent and a statement of support from Margaret, William initiated the process of formal recognition of paternity and application for temporary custody. In parallel, Paul discovered disturbing connections between Helen and Amanda's case. The legal director of Taylor Developments maintained a close relationship with the judge who had convicted Amanda, as well as with the detective responsible for the initial investigation. More alarming still, confidential documents revealed that the law firm contracted to build the case against Amanda had received substantial payments from an offshore account indirectly linked to Helen. She orchestrated everything, concluded William, horrified upon receiving this information. She framed Amanda to keep her away from me and consequently keep my daughters away. "We need more evidence before making a formal accusation," warned Dr. Claudia. "But we already have enough to support the request for criminal review. The problem is that once we initiate this process, your sister will know we're on her trail." "She already knows," replied William somberly. "The attempt to transfer the girls makes that clear. Helen is playing her last cards, trying to maintain control of the situation." The next morning, as he prepared for a preliminary hearing related to the custody request, William received an unexpected visit to his apartment. Helen, impeccable as always in her grey suit, was waiting in the living room when he came out of the bedroom. "How did you get in here?" he asked, surprised and irritated by the invasion. "I have my ways of accessing what is technically mine," she replied calmly. "Half of this building belongs to the company, in case you've forgotten." William remained alert, aware that this was not a social visit. "What do you want, Helen?" "To offer a deal," she replied without beating around the bush. "Abandon Amanda Richardson's case and the request for custody of the girls. In exchange, I guarantee they will remain together in a first-class institution with all the comforts children that age could desire." The proposal, as direct as it was absurd, confirmed all of William's suspicions. "Why did you do this, Helen? Why destroy the life of an innocent woman and separate 4 children from their mother?" Helen sighed, as if dealing with a stubborn child. "You've always been so talented for business and so naive for life, William. Amanda Richardson wasn't just an employee with whom you had an affair. She represented a threat." "What kind of threat could an architecture student pose?" "The kind that distracts an heir from his responsibilities," replied Helen, her tone hardening. "The kind that gets accidentally pregnant and produces not 1 but 4 heirs who would dilute control of the company. The kind that our father made me swear to keep away from you." The revelation hit William like a bucket of cold water. "Our father? What does he have to do with this?" "Everything," replied Helen, her eyes shining with an almost feverish intensity. "You think it was a coincidence, that sterility diagnosis you received at 20. Father ensured you believed you were incapable of having children, precisely to prevent an opportunist like Amanda from securing a place in the family through pregnancy." William felt the world spin around him. The implications of what Helen was revealing were monstrous. "You're saying our father falsified my medical exams, and that you, knowing this, allowed me to reject Amanda when she needed me most?" "I did what was necessary to protect the company, our father's legacy," justified. "Helen, when that woman appeared pregnant, even after you had ended the relationship, I immediately knew she was a threat that needed to be neutralized." "So you framed her," concluded William, each piece fitting into a horrible puzzle. "You fabricated evidence, bribed authorities, all to keep my daughters away from me. I intended for them to be adopted by different families in different cities," admitted Helen with disconcerting coldness. "But that meddling social worker, Margaret, insisted on keeping them together, claiming some absurdity about fraternal bonds being sacred." Helen's calculated cruelty left William momentarily speechless. This was his half-sister, the person with whom he shared the company, with whom he had grown up, whom he had trusted. The person who, apparently, had dedicated years to manipulating his life with frightening precision. "No deal is possible, Helen," he finally declared. "I'm going to get Amanda out of prison and recover my daughters, and you will legally answer for everything you've done." Helen smiled, that cold smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm afraid it's not that simple, dear brother. I engaged in certain irregularities to protect our interests, it's true, but if I fall, I'll take Taylor Developments with me. Are you prepared to sacrifice our father's legacy for a woman you barely knew and 4 children who are practically strangers to you?" The threat was clear, but William had already made his decision. Some things are more important than money or business legacies, Helen. Family is one of them, true family based on love and respect, not manipulation and control. Helen narrowed her eyes, realizing her intimidation strategy had failed. "You really have changed," she noted, with something close to surprise. "Those girls transformed you in just a few weeks." "Maybe they just awakened who I really am," replied William. "Someone our father and you tried to suppress for years." The confrontation was interrupted by the intercom. It was Paul, coming to pick up William for the hearing. Helen adjusted her bag on her shoulder, preparing to leave. "This is not our last conversation, William," she warned, heading for the door. "I hope you understand the consequences of the path you're choosing." After her departure, William remained motionless for a few moments, absorbing the weight of the revelations. His father, the figure he had always admired, had manipulated his life in unimaginable ways. Helen, whom he had trusted, had transformed this manipulation into a life project. But now, for the first time in many years, William felt he was regaining control of his own destiny. And more importantly, he was assuming responsibility not only for his future choices, but also for the mistakes of the past. When Paul arrived, he found a transformed man, more determined, more focused, but also more human than the powerful businessman he had met months before. "Are we ready for battle?" asked the investigator, noticing the change. "More than ever," replied William, picking up the folder with documents for the hearing. "It's time to reunite my family." The preliminary hearing for the temporary custody request went better than William had expected. The judge, moved by the quadruplets situation and impressed with the documents proving paternity, granted temporary custody under the condition of regular visits from a social worker. The girls could remain at Hope House for 2 more weeks, time considered necessary for gradual adaptation to the new reality. "It's an excellent result," commented Dr. Claudia as they left the courthouse. "Now we need to focus on the criminal review of Amanda's case. With the new evidence, we have good chances of obtaining at least an injunction for her provisional release." William agreed, but his mind was already several steps ahead, anticipating Helen's moves. If his half-sister had been willing to reveal the manipulation she had perpetrated for years, she certainly wouldn't back down now that she was cornered. His suspicions were confirmed that same afternoon. Upon returning to the office, he found the main executives of Taylor Developments gathered in an extraordinary board session, convened by Helen. The atmosphere was one of evident tension, with suspicious looks directed at him as soon as he entered. The meeting room. "Good that you could join us, William," greeted Helen with false cordiality. "We were just discussing the recent instability in your leadership." William observed the faces around the table. Some executives seemed genuinely concerned. Others clearly aligned with Helen, probably already co-opted with promises of promotions or benefits. "Instability?" he questioned, keeping his voice calm as he took his place at the head of the table, opposite to Helen's position. "Interesting choice of words to describe the fact that I'm exercising my responsibility as a father." "It's precisely about this that we need to talk," intervened Richard Morgan, financial director and Helen's longtime ally. "Very concerning rumors have emerged about your involvement with a prison inmate and 4 children of dubious origin." "There's nothing dubious about my daughters," replied William firmly. "The DNA test confirmed my paternity, and the justice system has just granted me temporary custody." A murmur ran through the room. Clearly, Helen had presented a distorted version of the facts, possibly suggesting that William was being manipulated or even blackmailed. "The issue, William," continued Helen, "is that your recent behavior raises serious concerns about your leadership capacity. Cancellations of important meetings, impulsive decisions, redirection of company resources for personal matters. What resources exactly? Interrupted William. All expenses related to Amanda's case and the welfare of my daughters were paid with my personal assets, not with company funds. If someone here has used corporate resources for personal purposes, it wasn't me. The comment, indirectly directed at Helen, made some board members exchange intrigued glances. It was internal knowledge that the legal director occasionally operated in grey areas regarding the separation between corporate assets and her personal projects. We are not here to discuss financial details, Helen skillfully diverted. The central point is that the shareholders are concerned about the stability of leadership and the continuity of strategic projects. The shareholders? Repeated William, raising an eyebrow. Or you, Helen? Because as far as I know, the main shareholders of this company are the two of us. The tension in the room increased perceptibly. The executives present seemed increasingly uncomfortable with the direct confrontation between the half-siblings. Perhaps it's time to consider a temporary leave, suggested Helen, finally revealing her objective. So you can resolve your personal issues without compromising the company. It was an astute move. By proposing a leave, Helen avoided the appearance of a direct coup while preparing the ground to assume total control. William immediately perceived the strategy. That won't be necessary, he replied firmly. I am perfectly capable of managing my professional and personal responsibilities simultaneously. And to demonstrate my commitment to transparency, I would like to propose a complete audit of the company's operations over the last 5 years, including all offshore accounts and contracts with legal service providers. The color abandoned Helen's face. The specific mention of offshore accounts and legal services, exactly the mechanisms she had used to frame Amanda, was no coincidence. That is unnecessary and costly, she protested, trying to maintain composure. Our regular audits are more than sufficient. I disagree, countered William, especially considering certain irregularities that have been brought to my attention recently. For example, substantial payments to a law firm that coincidentally was involved in the conviction of my daughter's mother. The silence that followed was deafening. The executives present, many of them ethical professionals who had simply been kept in the dark about Helen's machinations, seemed genuinely shocked. This is absurd, declared Helen, rising abruptly. You are mixing personal matters with legitimate corporate decisions. Am I? Questioned William, calmly remaining seated. Then you deny having used company resources to frame Amanda Richardson, deny having falsified evidence, bribed authorities, and manipulated the judicial system to separate a mother from her daughters. The direct accusation, made before the entire executive board, was a blow from which Helen could not easily recover. Her reaction, a mixture of anger, fear, and indignation, confirmed for all present that there was truth in William's words. This meeting is adjourned, she declared, hastily gathering her documents. We'll continue this discussion at a more appropriate time. On the contrary, intervened Sarah Peters, compliance director, a respected professional who until then had observed the confrontation in silence. I believe we need to clarify these accusations immediately. If company resources were used for illegal activities, all of us could be held responsible. The unexpected support gave William the necessary advantage. In the minutes that followed, he presented a summary of the evidence collected by Paul, without revealing details that could compromise the ongoing investigation. With each new revelation, Helen's isolation became more evident. At the end of the meeting, the board voted unanimously for Helen's temporary suspension from her executive functions, pending a complete internal investigation. It was a significant victory, but William knew the real battle was just beginning. You have no idea what you've just initiated, murmured Helen as she passed him on her way out. There are things you don't know, William, things our father did to build this empire. Whatever it is, I'm prepared to face it, he calmly replied. Some truths need to come to light, even if they're painful. In the days that followed, William's life transformed into a roller coaster of emotions and responsibilities. During the day, he managed the corporate crisis triggered by Helen's removal and the subsequent revelations about her illicit activities. At night, He dedicated himself to truly getting to know his daughters, visiting them daily at Hope House while preparing his penthouse to receive them. At the request of the girls themselves, he decided to transform one of the guest rooms into a shared dormitory. "We're used to sleeping together," explained Lucy. "It would be strange to have separate rooms now." William respected the wish, understanding that the transition would already be challenging enough without imposing unnecessary separations. He hired a decorator specialized in children's environments, but made sure the girls themselves participated in the choices. "I want you to feel at home," he explained during a visit when he brought furniture catalogs and color samples. "This will be your space." The selection process revealed even more about the distinct personalities of the quadruplets. Laura, practical and objective, was concerned with functionality, adequate space to study, shelves for books, organization. Lucy, sociable and communicative, wanted to ensure the room would allow for eventually receiving friends. Lily, the dreamy artist, focused on colors and textures, imagining an environment that would inspire creativity. Luna, quiet but observant, simply asked for a small space by the window where she could cultivate plants. "Mommy always said we need light and space to grow," she explained timidly. "Like flowers." The comment deeply touched William. Each new discovery about how Amanda had raised the girls, even in such adverse circumstances, increased his admiration for her and deepened his feeling of guilt for not having been present. Parallel. To the domestic preparations, the criminal appeal case advanced. Dr. Claudia, armed with the evidence collected by Paul and strengthened by the revelations that emerged during the corporate investigation against Helen, secured a special hearing with the judge responsible for the case. "The prospects are promising," she informed after the preliminary meeting. "The judge was visibly disturbed by the evidence of procedural manipulation. I believe we'll at least get a provisional release while the merits of the case are re-evaluated." The news filled William with hope. The idea of reuniting Amanda with her daughters, of being able to offer them the complete family they deserved, had become his main motivation. During one of his visits to the prison, he shared with Amanda the advances in the process and the preparations to receive the girls. "Are they excited about the move?" she asked, her face lighting up when talking about her daughters. "Excited and apprehensive," replied William honestly. "It's a big change, but we're building a relationship little by little." Amanda nodded, understanding. "They're resilient, but also sensitive. Lily is probably accepting the situation more easily. She always sees the positive side of everything." "Laura must be the most resistant, right?" "Yes," confirmed William, impressed by the accuracy of the observation. "She still constantly tests me, questions my intentions. Sometimes it's exhausting, but I understand she's just protecting her sisters." "She assumed that responsibility from a very young age," explained Amanda, with a mixture of pride and sadness. "Even before my imprisonment, when we faced financial difficulties, Laura took upon herself the role of guardian. At 5 years old, she was already negotiating payment terms with the grocery store owner." William felt a wave of admiration for the daughters he was just beginning to know, and for the woman who had raised them with so much love and dignity despite all the adversities. "I want you to know," he said, carefully holding Amanda's hands across the table, "that regardless of what happens between the two of us, you will always have a place in their lives. I will never try to keep them away from you or diminish your importance." Amanda's eyes briefly watered, but she regained her composure. "Thank you. That means a lot to me." She paused, as if carefully choosing her next words. "William, when I get out of here, I don't expect us to form a traditional family. A lot has happened, a lot of water has passed under the bridge." "I know," he assured her. "I don't have romantic expectations, Amanda. I just want to ensure that you and the girls have everything you need, that you can rebuild your lives with security and dignity." The moment was interrupted by the guard announcing the end of visiting hours. As they said goodbye, William felt that, finally, they were reaching a genuine understanding based not on an idealized past, but on the people they had become after 15 years of separation. 2 weeks later, a call from Dr. Claudia changed everything. The lawyer, normally measured in her demonstrations of emotion, could barely contain the excitement in her voice. "We did it." The judge granted the injunction for Amanda's provisional release while the review process follows its course. She can leave tomorrow. The news hit William like a wave of joy and anxiety. Everything was happening faster than he expected. The girls, who were preparing to move to his apartment over the weekend, could now reunite with their mother before the transfer. "Does the girls know yet?" he asked, imagining their reaction. "Not yet," replied Claudia. "I thought you might want to give the news personally." That afternoon, when he arrived at Hope House, William found the quadruplets in the garden, helping Mrs. Judith with the flowers they sold on the streets. The scene, 4 identical girls meticulously caring for small, colorful buds, perfectly captured their essence, different in personality, but united by bonds that transcended genetics. "I have important news," he announced, gathering them under the shade of a tree. His heart accelerated as he saw 4 identical pairs of eyes fix on him with expectation. "Your mother will be released tomorrow." The impact was immediate and visceral. Lucy let out a cry of joy. Laura remained absolutely still, as if processing the information. Lily began to cry silently, a smile illuminating her face through the tears. Luna, the smallest and most contained, simply hugged her own body, closing her eyes as if absorbing the news through all her senses. "Is it true?" asked Laura, always the skeptic, always the protector. "Are you absolutely sure?" "I am," confirmed William. "Dr. Claudia just called me. The judge granted the injunction for provisional release while the review process continues. Your mother will be able to leave tomorrow morning." "Will we be able to see her?" asked Lucy, practically jumping with excitement. "Of course," replied William. "In fact, I came to get you for that. I thought you might help me prepare a special reception for her." The suggestion provoked an explosion of ideas from the girls. Soon they were planning in detail how to receive their mother, what flowers to arrange, what food to prepare, what music to play. It was the first time William saw them truly animated, without reservations or hesitations. "Can we make that carrot cake that Mommy loved?" suggested Lily. "She always said it was her favorite." "Of course," agreed William, moved by the specific memory. "We'll buy all the ingredients on the way." The afternoon transformed into a culinary adventure in William's apartment. The girls, initially intimidated by the luxury and space of the place, soon took over the kitchen with the ease of those accustomed to preparing meals. William observed, fascinated, the natural coordination between them, each assuming a specific task without need for discussion. "Have you always cooked together?" he asked while Laura meticulously measured the flour and Lucy beat the eggs with butter. "Since we were little," replied Lily, in charge of grating the carrots. "Mom worked all day, so we learned to manage." "Each one has her specialty," completed Luna, who was preparing a chocolate frosting. "But we make the carrot cake together, because it's tradition." The simplicity of the explanation covered a complex reality. 4 children who had learned to be self-sufficient from an early age, joining forces to overcome the forced absence of their mother during long workdays. While the cake baked, filling the apartment with a welcoming aroma, William showed the girls the room they had chosen, now completely decorated according to their preferences. The reaction was one of genuine enchantment. "It's exactly how we imagined it," exclaimed Lucy, running to explore every detail. Laura, always more contained, meticulously inspected the shelves and study space. "It turned out good," she finally conceded, which coming from her was equivalent to effusive enthusiasm. Luna immediately headed to the small space by the window where a special table had been installed for her plants. "Can I bring my seedlings from Hope House?" she asked timidly. "Of course," assured William. "This is your home now. You can bring everything that's important to you." The word home hung in the air, laden with meanings and expectations. For 4 girls who had known only instability, the idea of a permanent place to call their own was simultaneously comforting and frightening. "And Mommy?" Lily suddenly asked. "Will she live here too?" The question caught William unprepared. He and Amanda had briefly talked about future arrangements, but they hadn't reached definitive conclusions. "That will depend on her," he answered honestly. I prepared the guest room for your mother, so she can stay here in the first period after her release. Then she'll decide what she prefers to do." "Won't you be together?" insisted Lily, the romantic of the group. "Like a normal family?" William chose his words carefully. "Your mother and I met a long time ago, in very different circumstances. Now we are different people. The most important thing is that we both love you and want the best for your lives. How that will be organized, we'll need to discover together, with time." The answer seemed to satisfy the girls, who soon returned their attention to the preparations for the reception. The rest of the afternoon was dedicated to flower arrangements, finalizing the cake and preparing a small welcome party. The next morning, William drove to the prison accompanied only by Dr. Claudia. They had decided it would be better to pick up Amanda without the girls, allowing her a moment of adaptation before the emotionally intense reunion. When Amanda finally crossed the prison gates, William felt a lump in his throat. Despite the almost 3 years of confinement, she maintained an impressive dignity. Dressed in simple clothes that the lawyer had provided, hair tied in an improvised bun, she seemed simultaneously fragile and indestructibly strong. "Welcome back," he said simply, resisting the impulse to hug her. He didn't want to impose physical proximity after everything she had been through. Amanda smiled, a contained but genuine smile. "Thank you for everything." The return trip proceeded in relative silence, Amanda absorbing the sights, sounds, and sensations of newly recovered freedom. Occasionally, she asked questions about the girls, anxious for the reunion. "They're very excited," assured William. "They spent the whole afternoon preparing a surprise for you." When they finally arrived at the building where William lived, Amanda momentarily hesitated. "I don't know if it's appropriate for me to stay in your apartment," she commented. "People will talk." "Let them talk," he replied with simplicity. "What's important is what's best for you and the girls. Besides, it's just temporary until you decide what you prefer to do." The response seemed to reassure her, and together they went up to the penthouse. As he opened the door, they were greeted by a suspiciously complete silence. "They must be hiding," whispered William, entering the apartment. It was their idea, a surprise. Amanda advanced cautiously through the living room, looking around with a mixture of admiration and discomfort at the evident luxury. Suddenly, a joint movement revealed 4 identical girls coming out of different hiding places, each holding a small bouquet of flowers. "Mommy!" they shouted in unison, running in her direction. What followed was one of the most emotional moments William had ever witnessed. Amanda kneeling on the floor, embracing all 4 daughters simultaneously, all crying and laughing at the same time, words of love and longing mixing in, a moving cacophony. William discreetly stepped away, giving them privacy for that sacred moment of reunion. Observing from a distance, he felt a profound gratitude for having found his way back to this family he didn't know, and for having the opportunity to correct, at least partially, the mistakes of the past. The following weeks brought adjustments and discoveries for everyone. Amanda, initially reluctant to accept William's financial help, gradually understood that it wasn't charity, but a genuine attempt at reparation. She agreed to remain in his apartment while re-establishing herself, occupying the guest room while the girls shared the dormitory specially prepared for them. The family routine developed organically. William, determined to be present in his daughters' lives without suffocating their relationship with their mother, found a delicate balance between involvement and respect for Amanda's space as the main parental reference. At Taylor Developments, a profound transformation was underway. After Helen's departure, who ended up accepting a judicial agreement to avoid a more severe conviction, William significantly redirected the values and priorities of the company. He created a corporate foundation dedicated to supporting families in vulnerable situations, especially single mothers, and implemented social impact policies in all new real estate developments. On a sunny Sunday morning, about a year after the initial reunion with the girls on Fifth Avenue, the family gathered for a picnic in Central Park. As he observed Amanda and the daughters preparing the blanket and organizing the food they had brought, William felt an emotion that still surprised him: gratitude for the chance that had led him to find 4 girls selling flowers, 4 small reflections of a love he thought was lost forever. The quadruplets, now 11 years old, visibly flourished under the joint care of their parents. They still occasionally sold flowers, but now as a project assisted by the foundation created by William, helping other children in vulnerable situations develop skills and self-confidence. "What are you thinking about?" asked Amanda, approaching, while the girls ran through the grass chasing a kite. "About how life can completely change in an instant," replied William. "A red light, 4 identical faces, and suddenly nothing is as it was before." Amanda smiled, watching her daughters. "They were always special. Even in the most difficult moments, I never lost hope that one day we would be together again." "You are extraordinary," said William with sincere admiration. "You raised 4 incredible people, preserved values and dignity in them, even facing the impossible." "We did the best we could with what we had," she replied simply. "Now they have the chance to grow with more resources, more opportunities, and with 2 parents who, despite all the complications, are united by their love for them." William nodded, understanding the depth of what Amanda expressed. The path they had traveled wasn't conventional, and the family they formed didn't fit traditional molds, but there was something genuine and precious in the arrangement they had built: mutual respect, commitment to the welfare of the daughters, and the understanding that some connections transcend simple definitions. "Dad, Mom, come see," shouted Lucy, enthusiastically waving from a small hill. "We're managing to make the kite fly." The dad and mom in the same sentence, said so naturally, made both smile. It was a small daily miracle, a reminder that even after years of separation and pain, it was possible to rebuild something meaningful from the fragments. Walking. Side by side toward their daughters, William and Amanda represented a journey of redemption and reconnection that neither could have imagined. The man who had once been defined solely by his business success had discovered a deeper purpose. The woman who had faced unimaginable injustices had recovered not only her freedom, but the chance to see her daughters grow in an environment of safety and love. And at the center of it all, 4 identical girls who, like small resistant flowers, had found their way back home, bringing with them the promise that even in the most arid terrain, life finds ways to flourish. The end. Dear listeners, we hope the story of William and his quadruplets has deeply touched your hearts. To continue this emotional journey, we've prepared a special playlist with equally engaging stories. Find it here, clicking on the left. If you enjoyed this narrative about redemption, second chances, and the transformative power of family love, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like the video. Every day we bring unique stories that explore the complexity of life and human emotions in their various forms. Which character touched your heart the most? The protective Laura? The sociable Lucy? The dreamy Lily? The intuitive Luna? Or perhaps Amanda's unshakable strength? Share your impressions in the comments.